Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. We are continuing to broadcast from a remote location where my family's on spring break, though I am not. First of all, an apology yesterday because it appears our show did not upload onto Apple until overnight last night, which is very annoying. We don't know why. Apple is frustratingly non-communicative, but it's up now. So hopefully you've listened to that and you'll listen to today's so you can catch up on all the news. We did a deep dive on Nancy Guthrie, which was interesting, and we talked a lot about Iran, of course, because it's dominating the news. A lot to get to today. If you can believe it, that homicidal maniac Lindsey Graham was right back on Hannity last night, getting as much pushback as he's gotten thus far, meaning zero. Zero. I mean, I don't think it is the Sean Hannity show. I think it's the Lindsey Graham show. This is why, you need a firm hand on the tiller over there, because somebody needs to intervene and tell them that the way journalism is practiced is there's pushback. When someone continues to make frothing at the mouth claims about how many countries we should bomb as the United States, someone, a responsible host, would say, oh, but gee, what about the human death toll? Oh, but gee, how does that endanger the United States of America? None of that is happening there. It's really crazy to me. And equally crazy over on CNN is Abby Phillip, who is not only allowing, but actually pushing herself the lie that what happened in New York City the other day with this attempted terrorist attack with the 2 IEDs was an attack, a terror attack on Mayor Mamdani, that it was a Muslim being attacked by IEDs at a white supremacist rally. That's exactly the opposite of what happened. It was radical Muslims launching the bombs, attacking those who were protesting, and cops. The bomb was thrown at the cops who were on duty. But this passes for journalism over on CBS. And by the way, CNN. And by the way, CBS was also complicit, running a story that when they talked about those who threw the bombs, showed MAGA supporters. Like it was MAGA who threw the bombs. Like the media manipulation right now is kind of out of control. You've got to really buckle up and just go with your trusted sources, because right now everyone's trying to manipulate you. We are not. Here on this show, I'll tell you if it's my opinion versus a fact. The last thing I want, my worst nightmare is to have my audience running around out there with the wrong facts from me. And I promise never to do that with you. I will tell you when it's facts as opposed to my opinion, and you can filter it appropriately. In just a bit, we're going to be joined by our pals from Turning Point. We've got Charlie Kirk producers Andrew Kolvet and Blake Neff. They co-hosted the Charlie Show now. Amazingly, it's been 6 months since we lost Charlie as of yesterday. I mean, it has been a lifetime in some ways. It's like you see these clips of Charlie online and you miss him so much. He had so much wisdom. He had so many thoughts and so many things, and he had warned us all about so many things, including war with Iran. I'd give anything to be able to hear him now, right? I think he would support the administration, though not the war. That's my own take. That's my guess, is Charlie was very, very opposed to a war with Iran, understanding young people didn't want that. It was potential for quagmire, but he loved the president. And I think, he would not have wanted to undermine the president and the administration. And I understand that too. I would say I have less of that, protective instinct, because Charlie wasn't a journalist. He was a political operative and a very smart pundit and a thought leader and a faith leader. I'm in a bit of a different role, but also feel loyalty to the president and absolutely want to see him succeed and us succeed and our troops succeed here. But I also feel it's my patriotic duty to object when I do, and not be shy about saying, I don't think this is a good idea. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. Our sponsor, the Electronic Payments Coalition, says Washington politicians are always getting in your wallet, and now they're messing with your credit card. They say your credit card and the security it offers are under attack, and that Senators Dick Durbin and Roger Marshall want to change the nation's payment system to benefit corporate megastores like Walmart and Target at the expense of everyday Americans. Credit cards can keep your payments secure and provide rewards that families use to help make everyday purchases more affordable. The Electronic Payments Coalition says the Durbin-Marshall mandates would let corporate megastores cut corners on credit card processing, routing transactions over cheaper, untested networks with weaker security and fewer protections. Find out more at guardyourcard.com and consider telling Congress to guard your card. Okay, I want to start with this. Something extraordinary that we found in the Nancy Guthrie case. You guys are not going to believe your eyes. We went back and found footage of the inside of Nancy Guthrie's bedroom. We have it. No one's seen this. We found it in a 2013 episode of The Today Show. It was a segment in which Savannah Guthrie was interviewing her mom, the mom live in her home in Tucson, Arizona, Savannah live on the Today Show set in New York, it was a lighthearted segment about how to make your bed. Apparently Nancy Guthrie is big on making your bed and had taught Savannah exactly how it ought to be made. And they decided to do one of those fun segments where like they have beds on set and the anchors will try to do Nancy's way. And that's what they did. But you are about to see inside Nancy Guthrie's bedroom. Keep in mind, Savannah said her mother was taken from her bed in the dark of night. Well, you're about to see her bed in her house. This is the same house she's had since 1991. You're about to see it for the first time. This is from 2013. Watch this.
My mom is up early in Tucson, Arizona. Nancy Guthrie joins us now. Hi, Mom. Good morning.
Hi, Savannah.
Well,
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Mom. Good morning,
I see
Nancy.
that you've already made your bed, even though it's 3 a.m. there or whatever.
Exactly.
Mom, why was this an important skill to teach me?
Well, I think everybody needs to know how to make a bed, and so when the time came to teach you guys how to make a bed, this is what I tried to teach you
now,
anyway.
This is not just your standard bed making. This is the hospital corners bed making. We're talking you can bounce a quarter off of it, right, Nancy?
Natalie, don't put me to the test. It's way too early.
She's backing off.
Nancy, I just want to know how difficult Savannah was when you tried to teach her this. How much screaming and stomping her feet was involved?
All three of the kids thought it was a really worthless skill.
How do we do
All right,
it?
so, Mom, first you show everybody how to do it, okay? And then you can judge how we do it.
Okay, that sounds like a plan. Well, basically, since my bed's already made, the most important thing you have to do is to make sure this top sheet is really pulled in here tightly, because that's going to give you your smooth corner.
And the tuck under.
Then you pull this over, and you make kind of like a triangle.
I remember
with your
that.
top
Wait,
sheet.
don't get started yet.
And then,
I'm not getting started.
When do you make
and
the
then you tuck
triangle?
it under as tightly as you can. But here's the little skill. See this nice corner?
Yeah.
You want to make sure that's as tight as can be.
Okay.
You tuck it in.
And you can keep cookies in
Then when
there.
you sleep, there you go.
And then,
So
Mom,
when you
just
sleep
bounce
in the
a
middle of the
quarter.
night, it doesn't pull out.
All right.
That's because
Oh, there.
for
That's
David,
all right.
this would
He's
be a
pulling
toy
it up.
bed.
That's good.
That's
There
the
you
problem.
go.
Mom, thank you so much. It's so good to see you. Thanks for coming on the show. I know
What
it's
does
early
this do?
there.
Honey, it's really early. Bye-bye.
Okay. So what's interesting about that clip is you can see where she slept every night, and you can see exactly what this abductor must have walked into. I mean, does anybody's mother dramatically overhaul their bedroom when they're in their 80s or 70s? I mean, that was what, 13 years ago? So Nancy Guthrie would have been 70, just about 70. Whatever, she may or may not have, but the point is simply you can see right into her bedroom and generally the way it was and the way it was set up, and she lives in the same house. And what you're seeing for the listening audience is a bed it looks like it's a king, might be a queen at the smallest. And right next to it, you can see the side table with a small lamp and some books stacked there, and maybe a foot and a half off of that is a window leading right into her bedroom. So she clearly had a window leading outside that would have taken you right into Nancy's bedroom, which suggests, I mean, I don't know, actually. I guess I shouldn't say whether it's on the first floor. I think the whole house is a ranch. So it would have been directly to the outside of the home and possibly accessible. We don't know how the intruder walked in. We know that the back door was reportedly found open and that there was reportedly forced entry. The cops are not confirming that, but that was Ashley Banfield reporting early on. And we know that we saw an intruder mess with the front door and at least consider trying to go through that way. But so you see then you see a small bookcase, like maybe a 2-shelf bookcase that's low, would kind of fit underneath the window, and what looked to me like a VCR or DVD player. Again, this is 2013. Underneath it. And so here's why I think this is interesting, because we had an alleged kidnapper note early on in the Nancy Guthrie scandal claiming they knew exactly where she kept her Apple Watch, and they had described something inside Nancy's bedroom that led some, according to Harvey Levin, Sheriff Harvey, as Zach Peter calls him, Harvey saying that they were taking these alleged ransom notes very seriously, and that the police had reportedly spun their wheels quite a bit on these notes. Did those people behind that note see this segment? Because I could go right now and write a very convincing kidnap note on Nancy Guthrie. I could describe the inside of that room to a T. And if you didn't know that the Today Show had aired that footage in 2013, you would be very convinced that I had been inside Nancy Guthrie's bedroom, and I never have been, right? I could describe the brown carpeting. I could describe the tan bedspread. I could describe the ornate head of the bed, where it's sort of wooden and it's got 4 arches and an intricate design. I could describe the lamp right next to the bed, which is sort of princess style, old fashioned, the DVD player, the window right there with some sheer white curtains. I mean, I could convince you. So this is a crazy piece of tape to surface. We found it, and I wonder whether the authorities are even aware that this was broadcast publicly. This is the thing, you guys. I mentioned this to you, but having been at the Today Show for a short time, they do really lean on you to overshare. You know, they leaned on me to overshare. It's not born out of nefarious intent. They want the audience to feel like they know you, and I get that, but you have to be really careful. Like, I know I think all of the Today Show hosts show their children and their faces on TV. Certainly Savannah does, Hoda, and it's very dangerous. It's dangerous. The mom is a different story. I mean, I showed my mom too. Because prior to this, nobody ever thought their mom could be potentially endangered. You know, it was just, this is a whole new kind of crime. But to actually go into the bedroom and show off like the most intimate area of her mom's life may have given somebody some sort of way of manipulating either the FBI and the Pima County Sheriff's Department by being able to say you knew what it looked like, or potentially giving you a roadmap for what you would encounter once you got into that bedroom if you were a bad guy willing to do some homework. That's just speculation. We don't know whether that's what's happened, but it's a shocking thing to see, because all this time, these past, 6 weeks, 39 days, I think we're at now, we've been talking about how she was taken out of her bed and out of her bedroom in the middle of the night, and now we see exactly what that would have looked like, and there's something very eerie about it. It just makes me want to pray for Nancy Guthrie even harder. This poor woman. There she was, more vibrant, 13 years ago, as we all were 13 years ago. And, standing on her own 2 feet, looking not like a young woman, but younger than when she was taken. And you picture her more feeble and in that bed, as any 84-year-old would be, scared out of her mind as somebody came into that small room and grabbed her. It's awful. On a related note, today there is an article in the New York Post that is all about Sheriff Nanos and how he was forced to resign from his first job. The reason I want to talk to you about this just briefly is because we've been discussing on the show. I'm trying to pull up the article, so forgive me for just looking at my phone here. But we've been discussing how this man is not careful. If you watch yesterday's show, which again did not download on Apple, but if you listen to it on Spotify, you heard it, or you saw it on YouTube, how he's not careful, this guy. He's been not careful with his words, and one wonders whether he's been careful with this investigation. It leads right to whether we're dealing with some criminal mastermind who committed this crime, or some doofus who got lucky because he had another doofus running the investigation on the other side. These are questions we have not yet had answered. But there's an article in the New York Post today writing about how Nanos was forced to resign from his very first policing job, reading here, to avoid being fired over embarrassing blunders, and then posted a resume online that fudged the dates of his employment. He started in the El Paso Sheriff's Department and was forced out in 1982, but his resume would later suggest he left in 1984, which is not true. They write that he racked up a laundry list of infractions ranging from excessive force to off-duty gambling to improperly using his siren and simple tardiness. They're citing the Arizona Republic for this report. Those missteps, including an allegation that he kicked a suspect in the head so badly they were hospitalized, landed Nanos with 37 days of unpaid leave in the early 80s and resulted in him finally being told to either step down or get canned, according to this outlet, Arizona Republic. He took the resignation option, but messed up the dates in his publicly posted resume, which stated that he remained with El Paso until 1984, 2 years longer than he did. The sheriff's office acknowledged the inaccuracy. This is present day, I believe, calling it and another missed day, quote, the clerical errors that had been corrected. But Nanos himself brushed it off when pressed. I get it, because this is 1982. He says, that's your urgent request? You sure you don't want to go back to my high school and ask why I got swats from the principal? Good luck with your hit piece, he told the Republic. But again, what's interesting about it is that he's been making confusing and contradictory statements about this investigation from the beginning. And here we see it's a pattern with this guy. It's a pattern. And, as you get an up-close view into the bedroom of the missing woman, the crime scene. This is our first look at the crime scene. It gives you a more full picture of what poor Nancy was up against on the moment she was taken and what she's been up against and the Guthrie family's been up against ever since, which is an investigator who does not seem careful, does not seem attentive to detail in the way you'd want if this were your mother, and poor Nancy, a sitting duck in that small, quiet, elderly woman's room, which should have been the picture of safety, and as we all know now, was not. Want to talk to you about not exactly a related segment, but what a transition for us. The View and Whoopi Goldberg and her take on why we are now involved in the Iran war. Believe it or not, it's going to tie Nancy Guthrie and Iran together. Watch this.
It's just nutty as hell. Mm-hmm. It's nutty as hell.
Yeah.
And you're right. Every day is something new. And it's, I was thinking about it yesterday because I thought, well, okay, why haven't we been talking about Savannah Guthrie and what's going on there?
And her mother.
Why have we not been talking about the Epstein files? Because that's still there.
Yeah.
This is meant to get us so worked up that we are unable to see anything else.
I mean, that is true crazy talk. How does ABC allow this person to go on the air every day and talk to us about the news? We launched the Iran war, in which 7 U.S. service personnel have died, and the latest is 140 have been wounded. Most not seriously, thank God, but some seriously. That President Trump would do that to distract from the Nancy Guthrie skin. I'm sorry to laugh. It's just the absurdity of it is so readily apparent. How did no one run out there with one of their little producer notes saying, "You are fucking crazy, madam"? That's crazy talk. The Epstein thing is also crazy, but it's been more widespread. So that's your standard garden variety leftist crazy talking point. The stuff about Nancy Guthrie. Trump doesn't want people talking about Nancy Guthrie, so we invaded Iran. Not invaded, but attacked. What? That's insane. That's not a well person. And while we're on the subject of Whoopi, and I'll get back to Iran in a moment, but while we're on the subject of Whoopi, we've been trying to get to this for a couple of days. Can I just, I want to show you something from Whoopi Goldberg, who's constantly, despite the fact that she's like another Michelle Obama, despite the fact that she is one of the richest, most successful Americans in U.S. history. She's one of those people who's got the EGOT, the Emmy, the Grammy, the Oscar, and the Tony. She's been lauded on every stage. She's a movie star. She's a household name. She hosts this show every day where she gets to express her opinions. She's a multi-millionaire. She still complains regularly about what a racist country this is and backward country and how hard it is to be black in America like Whoopi is. Okay, just watch this.
Every day, we are worried. Do we have to be worried about our kids? Are our kids going to get shot because they're running through somebody's neighborhood?
But I think it's important we remember there are places much darker than this country and people who deserve rights.
Not
and
everybody feels that way. Not everybody feels that way.
Racism is in the heart of the country. You can't get away from it.
It is a fact racism does exist. It is a fact that slavery existed. Yeah. You can't cover it up. You can't bury it deep enough. There's too many of us. We already know. I don't understand why it's still so difficult to just admit racism is and has been part of U.S. history. They lynched black folks. Black folks didn't climb up in the trees and lynch themselves.
Okay, literally nobody's trying to erase that from history. This is a left-wing lie that Republicans are trying to whitewash slavery out of the history books. It is a lie. Just because Republicans are not obsessed with critical race theory and DEI and are trying to remove that scourge from our school textbooks where it has no place. If you want to sign up for that bullshit kind of class in college, go for it. It's your money to waste. Public education, where most parents are slaves to the system, does not need that propaganda shoved down our children's throats. History, slavery, obviously. This is a left-wing lie in response to the removal from race indoctrination by some Republican or more right-leaning school districts. In any event, so that's Whoopi. She's very obsessed with racism, I guess because the country's been so bad to her. Well, guess what Whoopi did this week? She put some portion, a large portion from the look of it, of her belongings up for auction. And we actually got our hands on the auction promotion. And we are getting to take a look at what it is that Whoopi would like you to buy. There is, this is the stuff she's willing to discard. It's like meaningless to her, so she doesn't want it anymore. An 18-karat white gold tanzanite and diamond ring. You can get it for $9,000 if you happen to have $9,000 to spare on a random ring. Look at that. Very pretty. Means fucking nothing to her. She's like, take it. I don't care. I don't need my $9,000 ring. Here's a late Art Deco 14,000 yellow gold synthetic ruby and diamond cigarette case for $6,000. Do you have a $6,000 cigarette case? Do you need one? Because Whoopi's got one to spare. This is the oppressed person who wants you to feel sorry for her because of her black skin. She's oppressed in America, so you can see it in her $6,000 Art Deco cigarette case, gold plated. Here's a worn $14,000 rose and yellow gold and opal cicada pendant necklace for $3,500. $3,500. All right. So right now we're at we're almost at $20,000. That's just off the top of my head here, just looking at a few of the items. There's an antique $18,000 yellow gold pocket watch worth $1,750. She's asking for $70. Do you have a $1,700 pocket watch? Well, you're the oppressor. If you're white, I don't care whether you have one or you don't. You oppress this lady. Your white skin makes you the oppressor and Whoopi the victim, even though she has a $1,700 pocket watch. Who the hell even has any sort of a pocket watch in 2026 America? Well, she wants you to have it, and you can have it for the low, low price of $1,750. Then there's the more absurd items, okay? There is Peepek by what's his name? Peeing Balloon Dog. This will run you $600 if you want her peeing balloon dog. It is a yellow, it looks like a balloon dog in red on a pile of yellow pee, on what looks like plastic yellow pee. And she will charge you $600 if you want this off of her website. Then there's the Denise Vasquez vinyl Whoopi money doll for $200. I don't know what we're looking at here, but I'm afraid. It's a miniature of Whoopi looking very angry, which is, she's scary enough without the weird, like they've made her Asian, and I don't know what's going on. It's a strange little thing, but it'll cost you 200 beans. 2010, The Lion King Broadway and The View worn headdress for $800. So it looks like a pineapple. It's a pineapple hat. I guess she wore it on The View, so she gets to charge you $800. 15 people have bid on this thing. She gets to charge you $800 for this. Cyndi Lauper signed memoir for $700. So Cyndi Lauper signed a memoir for Whoopi. The note reads, you can see it signed, Whoopi, I hope you like this book. You've always inspired me to contribute to the whole world. Thanks, XX Cindy. Who auctions off a personal gift that is signed to them for $700? No offense, Cindy. I couldn't give two shits about you or your stupid book. I'm auctioning it. Like, who doesn't even just give that away if you're going to give it away? Like, is she hard up for cash? I think she's hard up for cash for some reason. I'm not sure why else she would be doing that. You can buy the actual memoir of Cyndi Lauper for $14.95 at Walmart, or you can pay $700 to get the one that's been signed by her to someone else, not to you, at Whoopi's auction. There's the 6 Black Folk Art Dolls Antique and Reproduction for $150. 6 Black Folk Art Dolls. And sure enough, it looks like Black people, little miniature Black people. I don't know what they're wearing. Dresses. I guess this is like historical. Looks from like the olden days. Folk. I guess this is their folk wear. What was she doing with these? Where were these in her house? I'd love to get a look at Whoopi's house pre-auction. By the way, there's tons of furniture. There's a baby grand piano up for auction. She's just kind of auctioning off her baby grand like one does. There's a Royal Vienna style porcelain pitcher for $75. That one features a white woman. You can get that one cheap, $75. The white lady's going cheap. Get it now while you can. $75 for this pitcher. You can get a nice pitcher at Crate and Barrel for $30 instead if you want. And then there's the Morgenthau Fredericks eyeglasses. One pair, multi-even worn. Three pairs. $350 for 3 pairs of Whoopi's weird ass worn sun eyeglasses. Do they have a prescription? Are they, what am I buying, Whoopi? I'm just buying them to look like you? I don't know. But this is one of America's most oppressed people selling you her used eyeglasses for $350 and her weird little knickknacks for $75, $100, $150, and her personally gifted books. Now, I would be remiss if I moved on from this segment without mentioning Gwyneth Paltrow, because while we were over there searching for Whoopi's weird items, we ran into Gwyneth Paltrow's auction items of note. And she might be even weirder than Whoopi. First of all, she's auctioning off a picture of her ex-husband. Who does that? Who takes, what clearly once meant something to her, a photograph of her husband, Chris Martin, the lead singer of Coldplay, and auctions it for the low, low price of $100. It only has 4 bids. People are not that interested. It's really not that compelling, I guess. Then here's the capper. Then there's a naked picture of Gwyneth. So if you would like to see a naked picture of Gwyneth, you can't actually see her private part. She's got the hand over the breasts, Demi Moore style, when Demi was pregnant and on the cover of the magazine. And she's got the other hand over the vag. 2008 signed Mario Testino photograph portrait, $250. $250 she wants. Got 7 bids. For who has a naked picture of themselves framed in their homes? Because this is framed. She clearly had that done and had it up on her wall. And I guess now she has new naked pictures of herself or something. So she wants you to have it, and you can, for $250. She's auctioning off her Coldplay Economuff earmuffs for $50. Clearly a gift from her husband, $50. Okay, so, the love goes stale, and I guess so do the earmuffs, which look more like headphones. Maybe it's just what they call Coldplay headphones. I don't know, but she's no longer into them. And she's apparently no longer into the Jeffrey Dahmer eyeglasses that we believe she wore to that trial when she was sued for the ski mountain mishap. Remember, she made news for wearing they look like Jeffrey Dahmer glasses, and here they are. They're extremely ugly. And she will charge you $500 for them. They are prescription. So just a roll of the dice on whether they fit you. Here's the best. This is the best thing on there. Moms out there, do you have a mom necklace? Most of us do. It either reads mom or it has your kid's initials on it. I have one. I'm sure you have something like it or have considered it. She's auctioning hers off. Hers reads mom. It's in 18 karat yellow gold. And you can have Gwyneth's mom necklace for $250. Can you believe this shit? Also, you can get her Birkin bag for $15,000 because it's no longer important to Gwyneth. She doesn't care. Take her Birkin bag for the low price of $15,000, or I guess the best bid. To be honest, the best bid. One other piece of Paltrow news while we're talking about her. These Hollywood celebrities are just off. There's something wrong with them. We know this. And yet they pretend to be our moral betters, and they get out there and they lecture us on, how we need to be better people, et cetera, all the time. Well, Gwyneth Paltrow made news because she's starring across from Timothée Chalamet in the film Marty Supreme. And she's 53. He's 30. He's dating Kylie Jenner, who's also basically a child. And Gwyneth took this role, reportedly turned down by Julia Roberts because Julia understood, Julie's pushing 60, that this would look totally inappropriate for her. I have to credit Julia Roberts. She doesn't do the stuff that a lot of these other celebrities do. She keeps her children out of the news. She doesn't invent fake photo ops of herself sitting at the Starbucks like J-Lo's doing every other day. And she has taste when it comes to the projects she takes on. She turned down this role, even though it's across from the new Hollywood It Boy, because she understood that there were some very steamy love scenes in which she'd have to be all over someone literally half her age. And this would neither make her comfortable doing, nor would it make her look good once it hit the theaters. And sure enough, Gwyneth Paltrow's now experiencing backlash for the sex scenes, the very steamy sex scenes she's done with somebody who is almost 25 years younger than she is. Our pal Maureen Callahan over at The Nerve called this out. Take a listen here to Maureen. Oh, by the way, I have to give you a warning, according to Canadian Debbie. Apparently, this is rather steamy and inappropriate, so hide the children. And here's a little peek at why Maureen is upset.
There's a sex scene in this movie that I found extremely disturbing. I cannot believe nobody else is talking about this. Again, this is why The Nerve exists. Here we go.
I'm sorry. Miss Stone wanted to let you know that she'd love to have lunch with you.
Miss Stone? That's Gwyneth.
Yes.
Stone is
Smash
Gwyneth.
cut to them having sex in the shower. Timothée is behind her. He's got his hand wrapped around her neck, choking her, and also removing her diamond necklace, which he's going to retrieve later from the drain. But he's got his hand around her neck, and she looks like she is in ecstasy. This is what porn has done to young men. They think that this is what women want. They think this is hot. They think this is sexy. They think this is powerful. Never let a man put his hands around your neck, no matter what. This is disgusting.
This is disgusting. I mean, shame on these filmmakers and shame on Gwyneth Paltrow, too. I mean, this is really, that's vile. And that sex scene was disturbing. Maureen has it exactly right. And, Gwyneth Paltrow, she doesn't need the money. She actually doesn't need your $500 so she can give you her Jeffrey Dahmer glasses. I will tell you something. Most of us who have expensive items that we no longer want, donate them. Okay? Donate. I can't tell you the number of things that I've donated. I would never consider charging you for my used prescription glasses, though I will donate them. I'll donate bags. I'll donate clothing. This is crazy what these women are doing. And what is with the weird exhibitionism? Why can't anyone in Hollywood just age? I think this is a desperate ploy by her to hold on to her youth. She's the same reason she's photographing herself naked and wanting you to look at her naked now, in her mid-50s is the same reason she said yes to that shower scene. Because she doesn't have the class or self-confidence of a Julia Roberts. Again, Julia Roberts and I have very different politics. She did that very annoying ad for Kamala where she suggested Trump voters, like the women, would undermine their husbands who always have strict control over them by secretly voting for Kamala. They didn't have to tell. She's annoying. Let's be honest. But I'm just talking about as a human, as a woman, as a professional, a successful person in America, which we have to be happy for. She's one of the biggest stars in the world, and she's ours. she's made very good calls. And it's because she has some class and she clearly has some self-esteem. Gwyneth Paltrow, different story. I mean, truly, who would debase themselves this way? It's never enough for these Hollywood actresses, right? Like you can become Whoopi and you still hate America. It's still racism, notwithstanding the EGOT and the millions and so on. You could become Gwyneth and you can look great and be this alleged wellness guru and still a movie star and having married Chris Martin, now this other guy, whatever, consciously uncoupled from the first husband. Still, you need to be praised. You need to be admired. You need people to look at you naked. You need to do naked shower scenes with somebody who is literally 25 years younger than you, or almost, because you need people to look at you and think of you as like a sexy, hot vixen, as opposed to just like an entrepreneur and a mom and someone who looks great, like period, as opposed to being in the news today is Margot Robbie, who's, I mean, she truly might be the most beautiful person on earth right now. She's one of them for sure. Top 10, you'd have to say. I think she's like whatever Sophia Loren was when she was in her heyday, or Brigitte Bardot, that's Margot Robbie. She's universally understood to be stunningly gorgeous. And I saw Margot Robbie in person 2 years ago. I was at this media event out in Utah. It was very interesting. And here we are, the two of us together. She looks amazing. This is her, like, relatively unmade up. Both of us had a little makeup on, but not a lot. We were at this event and we looked like two normal humans there, right? Two normal women next to each other. It was an honor to meet her. She just showed up at a fashion show and she looks absolutely skeletal. Hold on, I'm trying to get my note in exactly where she is. I found it. She is Paris Fashion Week at the Chanel show. Look at her. This is actually sad to me. She has lost the slight, ever so slight fullness that was in her face before. Now she's got the sunken cheek. And I don't know if that is, they say all these Hollywoods are getting that buccal fat removal from their faces, which obviously she did not need. Or the speculation online is that this is Ozempic, that she decided this is her on the right looking normal and stunning. And this is her on the left looking skeletal at the Chanel show. Many questioning now whether she's taking the weight loss drugs. I don't know what the answer is. It's never enough. That's the bottom line. It's never enough for these Hollywood celebrities. Margot Robbie's not ripping on the United States, at least that I know of. So that's to her credit. But this is one of the dangers in letting your child get sucked into the Hollywood madness. We talked about Britney Spears and her DUI last week. That's what happens when you make them childhood stars. Look at, I mean, the Kardashian Jenners they're not getting DUIs every day, but they are absolutely obsessed with themselves, with their appearance, which they think is everything. This whole industry, this on-camera Hollywood starlet and / influencer industry is extremely pernicious and has its values ass backwards. I'm sorry for them. I'm glad they've made a lot of money. I'm glad they feel like they're somewhat important, but I really think they needed more time with like solid parents who help them learn how to fill themselves up from the inside, as opposed to looking to these false gods of money or bashing America in Whoopi's case. Honestly, that's a false god. It's a false religion that the woke do, as you know. Or, extreme anorexia, which appears to be the case for Demi Moore and others in Hollywood, as some sort of filler, as something that's going to make them feel better about themselves. It never does. All right, I want to keep going. We're going to have on the turning point guys in a minute, but there's a couple things that I want to get to first. And that includes the war that is unfolding between Ben Shapiro and Piers Morgan. Just by way of background, as you guys know, I was very good friends with Ben, and then he attacked me, to my surprise, utter shock, at the Turning Point event in December. He thought that I should be lumped in as like one of the problems when it comes to, I guess, anti-Semitism, even though I have spent the past 2.5 years fighting anti-Semitism very, very vocally on this show, and will continue to. What we saw on college campuses post 10/7 was absolutely abhorrent. I want Mahmoud Khalil gone. I I haven't backed off of any of those views. Now I'm on his list of like cowardly people or anti-Semites, whatever. I can't keep up with it, and nor do I have any desire to. But the latest to be attacked by Ben Shapiro is Piers Morgan. And what was his sin? His sin was platforming, in quotes, Dave Smith, who is definitely a critic of Israel, who Charlie Kirk platformed as well at Turning Point. And that's why Charlie was called an anti-Semite. Remember when Charlie and I had our long discussion about both of us had been called anti-Semites because we went to the Turning Point event last July. And in one very quick exchange, we talked about Jeffrey Epstein's possible ties to intelligence and said maybe it was Israel. Like literally, that's all we discussed about Israel. We were both called anti-Semites by this leading Jewish organization. It wasn't some random internet commentator. And one of the reasons Charlie also got it after that was he platformed Dave Smith across from Josh Hammer, who's as pro-Israel as they come. But you see, you can't have that. You can't have a debate. So Piers did with Dave Smith what he always does with everybody, which is he had a big panel with like 6 people, the pro-Israel side there, the anti side there as well. And that was not okay with King Ben, who decided to go for him in SOT 1.
So last night on Piers Morgan, which is the Jerry Springer of political television, where people gather to throw chairs at one another and determine paternity. Piers Morgan, who has sort of made a mockery of the entire industry by putting on screen, whatever dregs are still willing to go on screen with Piers Morgan. He had on Dave Smith, who has, apparently his job is never to tell jokes, but to instead give poorly informed foreign policy takes, and also to hate America. Here we go.
So then he played the clip of Dave. So he decided that Piers Morgan had to be reduced to a Jerry Springer-esque character, that he's a joke. And then it came out that Ben has been refusing to go on Piers's show. And Ben used a clip from Piers's show saying the reason I don't go on his show is because he platforms Nazis. And here's the clip.
I just stopped appearing on his show. Why? Well, honestly, he kept bringing on actual Nazis and the Nazi adjacent, and then treated them all too often as voices worthy of a large audience. Like, for example, these people.
I believe that Jewish supremacy is the greatest threat to America, and I think it's the greatest threat to the world today. I truly believe that.
You think Hitler was very cool?
Yes, I do.
One of them.
And I'm tired of pretending he's not.
It's going to be the headlines tomorrow. Piers Morgan, Israel is ISIS.
Only amongst people who weren't listening.
That's how I feel about those young men in Gaza. You ask me why I won't condemn them. Because those young men were born into a concentration camp.
Israel has been a terrorist state. Okay, Israel right now is imparting a genocide and a Holocaust on the Gazan people.
Listen, it's Piers' choice who he decides to have on his show and how he decides to conduct the kind of clown car battle royale that he does on a show every night. And it's my choice not to join that circus. We all make our choices and we all live with them, but some of us make our choices based on, actual principles and not the clique.
Okay, so Piers has to be condemned as a Jerry Springer joke, and he's not allowed to have Dave Smith on, even if Dave Smith comes on with a bunch of pro-Israel people, because Ben objects. And then Ben pulls a bunch of clips of contentious, which was not revealed by Ben, interviews that Piers has done with various people on his show. Well, Piers did not take kindly to any of this. And he decided to play the other side of those interviews because Piers does push back on his guests. If he's going to have a Nick Fuentes on, he's going to give him a hard time. By the way, that's how it would go on this show too, but I've chosen not to platform him because I have absolutely no desire to talk to him or to advance his message with my audience. That's fine though. Piers went a different way and I have no problem with that. I have no problem with having whatever. People do their shows the way they want to do them. And Ben was right that he doesn't have to go on Piers if he doesn't, but there was absolutely no point in attacking him, making an issue of Piers Morgan, and he's been attacking him ever since, just because he platformed, quote unquote, one guy you don't like in the midst of many others who are espousing your view. I guess they have to have a monopoly on Piers' show, which you don't control, and I guess you're very upset about it. Here's Piers showing the other side of those interviews.
And it's outrageously disingenuous that the clips he showed did not include the parts of those interviews where I called out every single one of them about things I didn't agree with. His montage of the same interviews could have looked like this. You sound like a Nazi.
I mean, why do you say that?
That's literally what Nazis would have said in World War II. You think if half your family had been wiped out by very fucking cool Hitler, you'd still think he was very fucking cool? Or would you think that actually he was a despicable monster who murdered 12 million people? The comparison, which is more apposite, is ISIS and Hamas. They are both nihilistic terror groups intent on killing as many Jewish people and others as they can possibly kill. That's not true.
As the numbers, okay.
It's just not true.
Piers.
Well, Professor, with respect.
Okay, I'm not going to.
It's not true.
Piers. Yeah, but you have to listen to what I say.
But you want me to believe you when you say you weren't aware of the scale of this for several days. I find that just, I'm incredulous. You want me to believe that?
This country, which was formed in 1948 by pretending to be refugees, if you will, and being invited into the homes of Palestinians, the horrific story
of what happened. Well, they weren't pretending to be refugees. They were people fleeing a Holocaust. You can take the view, as many do, that interviewing people with extreme opinions is pointless. You can stick your head in the sand like an ostrich or hide behind your very big desk and wish they didn't have an audience, but they do.
Totally disingenuous clip by Ben Shapiro. He takes the controversial piece that these people have said, some of these people, and airs it as though this is Piers' sin, that he's allowed these people to come on and just have his platform and spew racist talking points like, Hitler's very fucking cool, in the case of Nick Fuentes, without showing what Piers always does. Piers, that's his bread and butter. He loves having these mix-ups. Even when I go on there, we had a very contentious mix-up over Bad Bunny at the Super Bowl that has over 40 million views right now. People enjoy watching these spars. Some people, this sparring. So to suggest that Piers would just allow somebody like Nick Fuentes to come on and not challenge him, it's just like so disingenuous. And Piers responded to the overall criticism as follows, Top 4.
If you disagree with him, you're a Nazi, he says, channeling Kamala Harris. Everybody knows my position on Israel. I vehemently defended Israel's right to respond and defend itself after October the 7th. I became increasingly critical of Israel because its government's actions in Gaza became impossible to defend. If Ben listened to some of the arguments instead of just throwing tantrums about them, he might understand why. Just as I continue to host people who defend Israel's conduct in Gaza when many people wish I wouldn't and say I shouldn't, Ben Shapiro does. He, of course, has my phone number and my email address. He could have discussed his differences with me in private, which I would have preferred. But he hasn't bothered to even politely reply to my occasional messages for a very long time now, oddly, since the very moment I started criticising the Israeli government. And he chooses to get on his own podcast and throw pathetic pot shots at me instead. So let me use my platform to respond directly. The difference between me and you, Ben, is that I'm heavily criticised by both sides because I listen to both sides and very often I criticise both sides too without fear or favour. You're only criticised by one side because you choose to air only one side and you choose to ignore or even silence the other. I'm a journalist. You are a propagandist.
I'm sorry to say he's 100% right. It's very sad to me as somebody who's known Ben forever and helped make Ben 100%. He became a star on my show, The Kelly File. I'm very sorry to see this happen. And there is absolutely no cause to go run around policing the guests on somebody else's show and trying to diminish somebody who is as interesting, but, and I mean this complimentary, benign as Piers Morgan. Piers is not a pernicious force. Piers is an interesting guy who's got an interesting show. Maybe it's for you, maybe it's not. It's up to you. I think he's really interesting, and I think his interviews are great. But now we have to get rid of Piers Morgan. So obviously, in Ben's view, Tucker had to go. Clearly, even though he helped build Candace, she had to go. Then I had to go, even though I've had a 15-year friendship with a guy, publicly attacked me. Same thing, not even a text in advance. Even though we had a text like literally 4 months or 4 weeks earlier saying, no matter who we're friends with, because he was mad I was friends with Tucker, our friendship means more to us than anything. And we won't do anything to F it up. Next thing I know, I get attacked by him on stage at Turning Point. Now Piers Morgan. Like, how many people have to go? Truly, how many people must be culled from the conservative movement in order to make Ben happy? This is ridiculous. And it's not just Ben. All right. There are others who take his lead once he calls you an anti-Semite or says you need to be kicked out of, polite society. There are a couple of others, not a huge amount, I have to say. Ben's numbers are very bad right now. But he's got some influence with some crew. This is so wrong. So good for Piers Morgan for fighting back. I'm completely on Team Piers, and I'm sorry to see Ben going in this direction. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back with our friends from Turning Point. Don't go away. When it comes to your dogs, why does there often seem to be compromise when it comes to their food? It's either fresh and healthy, or it's easy to store and serve. But Sundays for Dogs will bring you both. Founded by Dr. Tori Waxman, a veterinarian and a mom who got tired of seeing so-called premium dog food full of fillers and synthetics, she designed Sundays, air-dried real food made in a human food-grade kitchen using the same ingredients and care you would use to cook for yourself and your family. Every bite is clean, packed with real meat, fruits, and veggies, no weird ingredients, and no fillers. Best of all, just scoop and serve. No freezer, no thawing, no prep, no mess. Just nutrient-rich food that fuels their happiest, healthiest days. Consider making the switch to Sundays. Go right now to sundaysfordogs.com/Megyn50 and get 50% off your first order. That's 50%. Or you can use code Megyn50 at checkout. That's 50% off your first order at sundaysfordogs.com/Megyn50. Let's get into the latest on Iran and CNN spinning the terror attack in New York City as an attack on Zohran Mamdani. What? With our next guests. Andrew Kolvet is the spokesman for Turning Point USA and the executive producer of The Charlie Kirk Show, and Blake Neff, who is a producer on The Charlie Kirk Show as well. And now these guys have been doing yeoman's work, keeping that show going and working very hard to keep Turning Point going. Together, they have worked with Charlie for many, many years. They knew him very, very well, and they have kept the organization thriving in these 6 months since Charlie has been gone. Guys, welcome back. Great to see you.
Hey, Megyn. Great to be here.
Howdy. Thank you for having us on.
Yeah. Oh, great to see you both. All right, so there's a lot to get to, and we've got to start with CNN. I don't know if you guys have seen this craziness, but Abby Phillip, she's supposed to be like their reasonable one. She's supposed to be like their sort of boring milquetoast. I call her Napoleon Dynamite because it's just the way she talks. Like, it's not going to happen like that. That is not what Democrats do. There's like absolutely no affect, but she's saying crazy things. Last night tried to spin the two radical Muslim men who attacked cops and protesters who were out there protesting against having the Muslim call to prayer run 5 times a day over loudspeakers in New York City. They were attacked by two radical Muslims who threw an IED, 2 of them, at them and at cops as an attack on the Muslim mayor of New York, Zohran Mamdani. And she did it repeatedly. Here's a sample.
2 Republicans say Muslims don't belong here after an attempted terror attack against New York's mayor, Zohran Mamdani, and the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, says nothing really to condemn those comments.
Okay, it happened repeatedly on CNN. It was in several scripts. She read them with no problem. And let me tell you that as the anchor, having anchored a show on Fox News for many, many years, you see all the scripts. They don't come at you as a surprise. It's not every time. Sometimes you're overwhelmed and you don't get to edit every script and you get caught by surprise, but not when you tease it 3 times that way. That's an intentional decision by you and your team to style something as something other than what it is. So, Andrew, your thoughts on what the fallout of this is and why CNN is doing that. I mean, that's a blatant lie.
Yeah, I think, it kind of goes back to that old expression, Megyn, that, the lie gets halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to put on its pants. And when we saw this over the weekend, there was a bunch of press headlines that were saying outside of Mamdani's, Gracie Mansion. So I think she probably just thinks that that's true, actually. I think this is ignorance because if you listen to her show, all she knows how to do is parrot left-wing talking points. I mean, it's very, very clear. I actually happened to watch this episode last night. by chance because the remote got pushed up to the wrong channel. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to watch this. And it really is just ignorant line after ignorant line, because you saw the first round of headlines said that. So that's what she believes. And you saw this with Jimmy Kimmel back when Charlie was assassinated. I mean, I think he was actually lying. I think it was a little step beyond that. But he thought he could get away with it because so many people were reporting that the assassin was from MAGA. And that she's relying on an ignorant audience as well. So she thinks she's going to get away with it.
It's a very good point. You know, Blake, it wasn't just Abby Phillip. Like, to Andrew's point that this is like ignorance by a leftist who surrounds herself with only leftist news. We saw CBS yesterday with a headline. We can put it on the board here. Hold on a second. I'm going to get it up in front of me too. This is the Weekend News Show picturing Trump supporters. A Trump supporter in its story, this is SOT 21, we'll play it, about this same terror attack. Here's SOT 21.
The FBI is investigating 2 men after an explosive device with bolts and screws was thrown into a crowd. It happened in New York City on Saturday during a protest that turned violent outside the mayor's official residence.
Okay, so I'm just going to replay that, and I want the listening audience to know every word she speaks is next to the picture of a Trump supporter wearing a Trump T-shirt until she says it happened. When she says it happened, we switch to the video of the Muslim guy with his IED running away after having dropped it. So listen to this again, knowing that every word she speaks is with a picture of a Trump supporter, a MAGA guy, prior to the words "it happened."
The FBI is investigating 2 men after an explosive device with bolts and screws was thrown into a crowd. It happened in New York City on Saturday during a protest that turned violent outside the mayor's official residence.
It's unbelievable, Blake, and yet it's totally believable.
Of course it's believable. I was actually reminded, I think, a decade ago and 30 years ago, the New York Times has a repeated habit of blaming the city of Dallas, for example, for JFK's assassination. JFK was, of course, murdered by Oswald, who was a communist who defected to the Soviet Union. And the left ran articles calling Dallas the city of hate. And that was what consumed JFK, this right-wing city that he was in. And it was... that was decades ago. We see the exact same thing now. The left, in general, is more likely to have a terrorism problem. The left, in general, is a lot more likely to have its young activist wing go unhinged, kill somebody. We, of course, saw that with Charlie himself. And because they're able to control the media apparatus, they're pretty consistent about attempting to reverse it and say, actually, it's you guys who are driving the violence in society. I mean, we saw them do that with the FBI. One reason we're having more of these foreign elements come into the United States and launch terror attacks is that the Biden administration repurposed the FBI to say that, white American men who go to Latin Mass or whatever are the chief terror threat in the United States. And the reality is that's just a distortion of numbers. It's a distortion of what they choose to count as terrorism, and it's fundamentally a lie.
Okay, so on the Abby Phillip front, she said this at least twice on the air. Okay, so this wasn't like she made an error. She meant to say it was an attack on cops outside of Mamdani's residence. Like that, okay, that would have been accurate. No, that's not what she said. So it happened at least twice, which means it was written into the script, it was pre-planned, she approved it, and she read it. She read it twice. If this were innocent after the first time, you would have seen her come back on the air and say, whoa, want to correct something I said. It happens, right? We've all been there. You say something live that isn't what you meant to say. She came back on and said it again. And here, Andrew, now just literally half an hour ago, not even 20 minutes ago, she tweeted, "I want to correct something I said last night. The bombs thrown in New York City over the weekend by ISIS-inspired attackers was thrown," no subject-verb agreement, into a crowd of anti-Muslim protesters and not specifically targeted at Mayor Mamdani. That wording was inaccurate, and I didn't catch it ahead of time. I apologize for the error. This is not good enough. And there's just no, I'm sorry. I have sat on the set. You see the scripts. You follow it through on your laptop. You see what's coming up. You read them. She read it in the prompter not once but twice. After it came out of her mouth, she did not apologize. She did not correct herself. And this is and then I'll show you an exchange that happened on her show that kind of puts the lie to it as well. But she had no problem with this, Andrew. She clearly just got woodshedded by somebody at CNN with a brain.
Well, no, this is my whole point. Like, I think you're giving Abby Phillip far too much credit for being an intellectual or a journalist. And I'm telling you, you still see this with Charlie's assassination. I didn't make my point well enough in my first answer. If you ask people who killed Charlie, a bunch of people, like on the just normal Americans, think that it was a conservative. This is because the lie, once you speak it out, it sets the narrative, and a lot of people don't do the work to go check it and check their work. And I'm telling you, I've heard stories about the producers on this show from friends that have been on it. They are, once again, do not give them more credit than they deserve. We're talking about a show that relies on the guests and the back and forth and the debate. We're not working with geniuses here. Okay, so I'm telling you, I think she just literally didn't know it because the media lied so thoroughly about it on round one.
Here's what's extraordinary, though. There was an exchange on the show, Blake, with Republican Joe Borelli, who fought with, I think it was Ana Navarro, over this exact claim. All right? And again, and still, Abby Phillip did not correct it. But listen to this here in SOT 20. This is on Tuesday, and this is last night.
The attack wasn't on Mayor Mamdani. It was on people protesting. It was attacking protesters, people protesting Mamdani.
Right by his house.
It wasn't to frame it as an anti-Muslim attack would actually completely reverse what happened. Someone who shouted
I'm not saying that it was anti-Muslim. I'm saying that they're finally doing that Republicans are finally doing something in defense of a Muslim, in this case, Mamdani.
This is ridiculous. Forget Ana Navarro's inane point. The point is Abby Phillip heard somebody on her set say, "It was not an attack on Mamdani, you idiot." And he started fighting with Ana Navarro about it. And still, Abby Phillip did not correct it. She had to be woodshedded by some boss who was like, oh, shit, we cannot get away with suggesting this was a terrorist attack on a Muslim. It was a terrorist attack by a Muslim.
Yeah, and we shouldn't forget also that they should have known this would be a problem because CNN already had to apologize for how they were describing it on X over the weekend. It's a network that has repeatedly had a problem with how it's framed things. It's very bizarre to me. The CNN was, I feel like growing up, CNN's reputation was the sort of in the middle news outlet compared to Fox on one end or MSNBC as it was shifting to the left. But they positively did lose their minds during the first Trump presidency, and they've never really found their footing again since then. I believe they're the network of fiery but mostly peaceful protests.
Yep.
And it's just recurred again and again, and we're kind of seeing why they're already writing the obituary for it with the possibility that they're going to get bought out here and possibly have Barry Weiss put in charge of it, because I think there's just not a lot of value to whatever CNN used to be. It's incompetent people, it's inaccurate people, it's extremely biased people, and even the left doesn't really like CNN for various reasons over the years. So it's like, who does this network even exist for at this point?
As I've said about CNN for a long time, boring is one thing. It's always been boring, but boring and biased, it's too much. Like that's a death knell to your organization, which is what's been happening there. They have no ratings. There was a post over the weekend. It was up, I think, on Monday, and then they eventually took it down about the terrorist attack. And this is how they began both their article and their tweet promoting their article. This is about the two guys who came from Pennsylvania and bombed this rally with their IEDs. Two Pennsylvania teenagers crossed into New York City Saturday morning for what could have been a normal day, enjoying the city during abnormally warm weather. But in less than an hour, their lives would drastically change, as the pair would be arrested for throwing homemade bombs during an anti-Muslim protest outside of Mayor Zohran Mamdani's home. Here's what we know so far. Let's take a lovely journey together, Andrew, into the streets of an unusually warm New York City and check in on our two resident tourists checking out the city of dreams from the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Oh, they have a bomb. Even CNN had to take that down later, saying that didn't conform with our editorial standards.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, this was so offensive, and they got rightly dragged for it. I mean, I think it's because it fits into a larger ideological framing of how they see the world, right? That if your skin is brown, you must be systemically oppressed, and that everything that happens to you is a result of the oppression that you have forced to live under your white oppressors. And so, therefore, the description made perfect sense to whoever drafted it. And they got rightly dragged because these two, kids, they're young men, were radicalized by ISIS. They're proud of it. They don't see themselves as victims. They see themselves with proper agency to go set right the wrongs that they see in the world. They are terrorists.
Yes.
And any sort of couching it in softer terms is such an indication of the brain rot and the lies that exist on the progressive media landscape. There's, we see this, to Blake's point, again and again and again, and this is why the mainstream legacy news media has completely beclowned itself and nobody trusts it anymore. Because they're run by crazy people. They're run by people that live in a bubble of virtue signaling, of contempt for the American people, of self-righteousness, of scolds. Like, I just think when I think of CNN, I do think of like Aaron Burnett and Jake Tapper and Abby Phillips, this constant look of like scolding you for thinking normal thoughts, scolding you for, believing your lying eyes, scolding you for having values that don't align with the Acela corridor. And so that's to Blake's point, why they are so unwatchable. Nobody can watch them because it's like a cringe fest. Literally, I saw it last night for the first time in years. I actually watched it. The only reason I watched that show is to see Scott Jennings rip apart the libs from time to time. And that's literally the utility of that show. Otherwise, it's completely
and you can get that on X. You don't actually have to tune in to Abby.
I don't need to tune in.
I mean, truly. Her ratings are bottom of the barrel. They're terrible, as are all of CNN's. It's not just Abby Phillip. They're all in the bottom of the barrel. There's no way that place. I know they've just been bought by Skydance, Paramount. That's still it's not gonna work. It's not turnaroundable, right? Like, I'm of cable news.
No.
I trust me. If you put me in charge of that, I couldn't save it. No one can save. Barry can't save it. No one can save it. Even Roger Ailes could not save it. It's not salvageable. You'd have to fire literally everyone, up and down, not just the on-air talent, all the producers too. They're not going to do that.
That's exactly right.
These same old horses and ask them to do new tricks. It's not going to happen. So they're severely afflicted by the TDS, and as you guys know,
they got it bad.
It's not a curable illness. Once you got the TDS. It's like the ALS. It's the end of you. Sorry, that's a terrible illness. But you know my point. It's the end. You can't get past it. Here is, by the way, for the listening audience, the truth about those guys. This is our police commissioner in New York City, Jessica Tisch. Watch here in SOT. Is it 19? Hold on, I'm trying to look. 18.
Qayyumi said in recorded post-arrest statements that he had watched ISIS propaganda on his phone and that his actions that day were partly inspired by ISIS. The complaint also details statements made by Amir Balat after his arrests. En route to the NYPD precinct, Balat made spontaneous statements without being questioned by NYPD officers that were captured on body-worn camera footage. He said, "This isn't a religion that just stands when people talk about the blessed name of the prophet. We take action, as well as, if I didn't do it, someone else will come and do it." And later, after waiving his rights, he requested paper and wrote a message declaring in part, "I pledge my allegiance to the Islamic State. Die in your rage, you kuffar." Now, "die in your rage" is a commonly known ISIS slogan, and kuffar is an Arabic term that refers to non-believers.
So it's not exactly ambiguous. These guys have not stopped talking about their love for ISIS since they dropped these IEDs. I mean, like, on your point, Andrew, I'm not exactly sure how even Abby Phillip could have missed it, because you don't have to get your information from Fox News or the Charlie Kirk Show or the Megyn Kelly Show. Just listen to the police commissioner and she'll walk you right through it. But no, the narrative that they pushed is much more palatable to them. That's the one they're used to, so that's the one they went with. Real reporting, CNN, everybody. Now, on the subject of coming under fire for platforming somebody, because we just talked about how Piers Morgan got attacked for platforming Dave Smith. You guys are experiencing that. And this whole Iran war fallout is a tricky business. You know, it's a tricky business for those of us who have more conservative audiences or more right-leaning independent audiences who are supportive of the president and may even be supportive of the war, but may have some questions about whether this is smart and how long it should go on. That's the position I'm in, at least. And I think you guys are experiencing some of this because I saw that you, quote, platformed Robert Barnes, who is brilliant. He's been on this show many times to talk about things like the Kyle Rittenhouse case and others. And you got some blowback on this. Hold on a second. I think we've got him on your show in SOT 26.
Exactly to your point. I mean, you guys would be on top of it more than others. I remember watching the live that the young generation, the new MAGA part of the coalition, a lot of them were African-American male voters, Hispanic voters, and young people, disproportionately millennials and Zoomers that joined the Trump coalition in 2024 that weren't part of it before, that boosted us from, being -4 to +1 in the national vote, that allowed for the sweep of the swing states, that allowed for some coattails in the House and the Senate, to have the House and the Senate. So that's what's at danger of losing. Young voters do not support this conflict. They don't want us involved in foreign conflicts, period. So the sooner the president can bring us home, the better. Similar, and then the other vote is the historic anti-war vote, disproportionately in rural and working class areas in the industrial and rural Midwest, and amongst Hispanic voters in the Southwest, which were bleeding out badly, as we saw from the Texas primary results, and then the libertarian vote. And it's just, you can't cut off this many parts of your coalition and survive.
Okay, so that leads to blowback to you guys, unfair blowback in my strong opinion. For example, Andrea Schaefer, who writes on Substack, why is TPUSA amplifying Barnes? Keep it up, TPUSA and Andrew and Blake, and you will lose more donors. Is Erica Kirk aware of the anti-Trump guests you are amplifying on the Charlie Kirk Show? She writes, if TPUSA continues to allow the infiltration of bad actors into the organization, I'm afraid it will become one more casualty. Then somebody else responded, you guys have been leaning very strongly toward the Groyper. A lot of people are not happy with the direction TPUSA has taken since we lost Charlie. There's no balance. Seth Dillon of the Babylon Bee weighs in as well, trying to lecture you on the difference between promotion and platforming and so on. In response to which, Blake, you say what?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to note we are obviously linked with Turning Point USA, but we are not actually a part of Turning Point USA. We are a separate entity, an allied entity. Obviously, when Charlie was hosting the show, he was operating both. So I just want to emphasize that. But the other thing is, this show, our show, it's not only Trump supporters allowed. We've had left-wingers on the show before. We're going to have Trump skeptics on the show. And certainly with the war, Charlie he was very skeptical of any sort of regime change. He was very skeptical of any major war with Iran. He told the president that repeatedly. Andrew and I were both front row witnesses to that fact. And when we were going up to this war, we said, even if this is launched, we're not sure the administration has done enough of a job selling it. There could be a lot of blowback to this. So, as we've said repeatedly, Charlie did trust the president. He gave the president a lot of leash on things that he was skeptical of because he trusted the president's judgment. But we would not be serving the role that Charlie served if we didn't also highlight that there are people on the right, there are people in the president's coalition who are skeptical of this or hostile to this. So, since the war's broken out, we've had people on who are very supportive of the intervention and who think it's going well, who think it will end in a big victory. And we've had people who are saying, I need to hear more to be sold on this. Or people just saying, I think this is against what the president ran on. I think it's going to be politically harmful. We've had those people on. We need to hear those voices because that's the reality. We're not a propaganda outlet. We're not spinning up a false reality. We're trying to present an honest one, which is that there are people who support this and there are people who are critical of it. And I think we've done a reasonably good job, because we've gotten emails that are saying that we're betraying Charlie by being too supportive of the war, and people who are saying we're betraying him by being too hostile to it. And the reality is Charlie was very skeptical of regime change generally, but also very trusting of the president. And that's a middle path that we're trying hard to navigate, because a lot of people do look towards what Charlie said about this sort of topic. They did trust what his judgment was on it.
Well, and
I
Megyn,
know
wanna
because
give,
we know he loved the president and was defensive of the administration and always wanted the administration to succeed, but did have strong opinions of his own on what the right direction to take would be, especially on something like a Middle East war. So it's nuanced, but there's no room for nuance amongst certain critics. You know, it's like you have to do it their way or the highway, Andrew.
Yeah, well, and I want to give people a little backstory on this. You know, Barnes and I were fighting, basically. We were arguing. And so then we pick up a phone and we talk to each other about, you know, what he perceives to be the overly zealous pro-war messaging from the show. And I was like, Barnes, you didn't listen to any, like you took a couple clips and you drew these vast conclusions about what we think about the war. So then we talk about it like gentlemen, and like you're supposed to do offline, and we realize, oh, actually, there's a lot of overlap here. What else people need to understand is that at Turning Point, obviously this is not Turning Point, but we have a bunch of the students on the show, and guess what, Megyn? They don't like it. Even Trump voting conservative students are upset about the war, and it's important that people understand that that is the truth. So I personally me and Charlie, you know, charted that course together. I was skeptical of regime change, rightly so. I'm a millennial. I saw what happened in Iraq. I saw what happened in Afghanistan. I saw what happened in Libya. There is a lot of reason to be skeptical of regime change. Things get messy. Unexpected things happen. It draws out. It's longer. It's costlier and bloodier than you expect. And so, you know, there's a lot of reason to be skeptical. But guess what? I do trust the president. I give the president a lot of leash. I can see the upside in this war. There's truth in what Barnes said. Truth in the fact that the coalition could be fraying at the edges, and we need to be aware of that, and we need to make decisions that are not only the national security best interest of the country, not only the best interest of our foreign policy, but also in the political best interest of our country. Because if we engage in this conflict in Iran and things go south and we lose the House and the Senate and all we get is impeachments for the next 2 years, that's a heck of a price to pay. And people need to understand what they're weighing when their country gets into a conflict in the Middle East.
That's a nightmare. I mean, truly the thought of losing the Senate, that's a nightmare. Now, because the map doesn't get easier for Republicans in 28 on the Senate. So it's like they need to hold this time around.
Well, and I think we can turn it around, Megyn. I do. My glass is half full here, but it's like, you know, this whole thing, like Charlie would have done it this way, Charlie would have done it this way. I can basically point to each one of those people that have the gall to get on social media and post that stuff, and I'll show you a tweet from about 7 months ago of them attacking Charlie. So yeah, you know, it seems to be the same voices that love to tell me what Charlie would have said or done or thought that had a big problem with what Charlie was doing, saying, and thinking when he was alive.
If you are looking to make smarter choices for your health this year, consider Riverbend Ranch. Their steaks are not only delicious, they also contain real, high-quality protein that helps fuel your body. Beef is a complete protein and contains all 9 essential amino acids your body needs to function. It also keeps you fuller for longer, reducing cravings and snacking. But here's the key. Not all beef is created equal. The quality of the beef depends entirely on how it's raised and where it comes from, and that's where Riverbend Ranch stands apart. For more than 35 years, Riverbend Ranch has been building an elite Black Angus herd, carefully selecting cattle for exceptional flavor and tenderness. All Riverbend Ranch cattle are born and raised right here in the USA. They never use growth hormones or antibiotics, and the beef is processed at the ranch in their award-winning USDA-inspected facility. No shortcuts, no middlemen, just incredible, healthy, and flavorful beef shipped directly to your home. Order today at riverbendranch.com and use the promo code Megyn to get $20 off your first order. Think about this. In 2006, $20,000 equaled roughly 33 ounces of gold at spot price. At today's prices, those 33 ounces would be worth about $165,000. That's why many smart Americans diversify a portion of their savings into precious metals. And it's why you should consider buying gold from Birch Gold Group. For thousands of years, gold has been a store of wealth, and today it's a crucial part of any balanced strategy. Even better, Birch Gold can help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered retirement account in gold. Just text MK to the number 989898 to receive your free info kit on gold. There's no obligation, just useful information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, let Birch Gold help you diversify with gold. Now that's peace of mind. Again, text MK to the number 989898 today. Can I just ask you how you're doing? Because it's like you and I talk offline, Andrew, sometimes, but
Yeah.
how are you? I mean, we just hit the 6-month mark and we just kind of forge
Yeah.
forward, and the world's on fire, and so it's easy to kind of forget that we didn't just lose this pundit who had all sorts of amazing insights for us. We lost a great man and friend.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, yesterday was awful. That was like actually, for me personally, it was the lowest point in some ways, actually.
The 6-month
they
mark.
say grief, yeah, they say grief, everybody's kind of comes to you and gives you their advice when something like this happens. And grief doesn't go in a straight line, it comes in waves. But, we played a tribute video that one of our producers made here, one of our video editors made for Charlie yesterday. And basically from that moment on, I was not okay. And I kind of left the office early, and I was just kind of low, if I'm being honest. But I will say the work helps because, sometimes it's okay to throw yourself into your work. And so, the fact that we had the halftime show, the fact that we have AmFest, the fact that we had the tours continuing on in the immediate aftermath, the memorial, all of these things were cathartic, actually. And, and the truth is, Megyn, I think Blake, you would relate to this, that when Charlie was so larger than life, and his mission was so big, and anybody that comes to this campus and sees all the buildings and all the different teams that are working, from the ballot chasing and the data to the campus, to the productions, the social media, the fulfillment center, when they see it themselves and they realize how big it is and how many different teams are activated all the time, 24/7 across the country, you realize that, and I think you would get this sense if anybody in your audience visited the campus here, the HQ, of the sacred duty it is to carry on the work. And then when you realize how many new students have come into Turning Point after Charlie's assassination, you realize that there really is no way but through. That is the only way to do this. And yeah, we want our teams to have time to mourn, and we've given everybody that opportunity. But we have a sacred duty, and thank God for that, because I'm just glad I'm not having to sit in the depression every day of having lost Charlie. And there is goodness in it too. You get to see the miracle of God's hand.
I think it's been
too.
somewhat helpful to Erica too. It's like she could just be sitting grieving, and being with her babes who she's with all the time and loves. But
all the time.
I think it's beneficial to have something to do, something that requires you to put the grief aside to the extent you can for, even short term, for a phone call, for a meeting, for a show in your case, and just get your mind off of it. It's this isn't the same thing, but just as an aside, after my career imploded with the NBC News debacle, I used to do crossword puzzles all the time, and that's when I got hooked on a lot of true crime shows. And the reason I was so into those two things is they don't allow you to think of something else. When you're trying to think of your answers for the crossword puzzle, it's impossible to think of anything other than what is this? What am I trying to fill this box in with? And true crime is it's the darkest thing possible. And so you're thinking about, oh my God, what happened? I'm going to solve this murder with Keith Morrison. And in a way, it just kind of removes your own immediate problems from your mind. And I think I can see with you guys, that's true too, right? It's the job is demanding. To do a show like this is demanding, never mind your responsibilities at Turning Point. It's a good thing for you. It's a good distraction. It's very healthy, Blake. I think that you guys have all kept working. It's required to keep Charlie's organization alive and his show alive, but it's also probably very healthy for you.
Yes, and there's a strong sense of mission. Charlie was good at articulating a sense of mission. You mentioned for Erica it helps. I think what especially helps is knowing that is directly what Charlie wanted. We know people would ask Charlie about this. What if something happens to you? People would express concern about that all the time. And one of the he would always just very casually throw off, oh, it'd be fine. Erica could take over. He said that directly. And as you say, I think us all having something to work on helps. I think we also get a lot of energy from just clearly how much Charlie meant to people. We have a room here on the campus of buildings that we have, and it's just dedicated to all the packages and artwork that people have either mailed or left here. So yeah, we have a bust of Charlie. Yeah. We have paintings of Charlie. We have watercolors. We have engravings. We have a couple purple hearts that people sent in. And I was walking outside the other day for a phone call, and there were people who'd driven here from California. They were in Phoenix, and they wanted to stop by our campus. And so I welcomed them in, and I showed them the room, and it was clearly immensely meaningful to them. And I think that gives us a lot of motivation, remembering and seeing directly how much of an impact Charlie had on people that he'd personally never even met. They'd only seen him in videos. They'd only heard him on his podcast. Maybe they only saw him on TikTok, and yet still had this huge effect on their lives. We always see these messages from people who say, I go to church because of Charlie. I found faith because of Charlie. I'm some people who say I'm going to church even though I'm not sure if this is true, just because Charlie sold it so intensely about how valuable it was in their life.
Or you want to happen to you what you saw happen to Charlie in terms of faith. You know, how inspirational it was to him, how important it was to him, how much it uplifted him. You want it to happen to you, you know? I've thought many times about how displeased Charlie would be at how divided the right has been since he died. And unfortunately, the Iran war is not going to help, right? Because it's like, among other things, there's strong feelings about the war, but among other things, it puts Israel back into the headlines, and that's just been so divisive on the right for a variety of reasons. And I think, you know, Charlie was feeling it too. Of course, he and I had a long talk about the pressure from the pro-Israeli side to toe the line and not deviate at all. But I think overall, he would be extremely sad about the divisions on the right. And then we pulled just a warning from him from your show. This is June of 2025. From our show, from June of 2025 on that exact issue. Here it is, SOT 28.
There is no greater divide on the American right than foreign policy. It's like we're largely in agreement on immigration. We're actually really in agreement on the trans stuff. But like the greatest fault line of the conservative movement is foreign policy. And I was really worried that this was going to bring it to not catastrophic, but very unpleasant moment. Turns out I was partially right because no one has liked to see what we've seen on X the last week and a half. It's just been seeing a lot of our friends fight. It's been really kind of nasty. We have a real enemy, which is the American left. And I think we should try to introduce some new rules that we should, with great spirit and great energy, debate foreign policy. But let's stay outside of the name calling, right? I don't think that helps us at all. I think the left found some enjoyment in it.
That was right after we dropped the bomb on the Iranian nuclear facility. And so it's like, you don't really have to search that far, Andrew, to figure out what Charlie would be saying. He'd be saying, try to keep the conversation above board. Try not to do the personal attacks within the right. And, you know, try to keep it on policy. Debate policy. Do it. Like, that's fine. He wasn't opposed to that. But maybe don't get into, like, personal blows against people who are fighting, in general, the same fights that you are on the right.
Yeah, the foreign policy, I almost said that, you know, in my last answer. Foreign policy is just fraught on the right. You know, part of the reason is because we sold President Trump as the peace president. So any time that he uses kinetic military force, then it feels to strike against a campaign promise, right? You know, I have I think, a nuanced view of this, that sometimes peace through strength only works if you show your strength. I think Iran is the biggest challenge yet, but Charlie was exactly spot on. And I remember spending a lot of time thinking about how we were going to message with Charlie and thinking about how we were going to thread those needles and keep the coalition together. I mean, you know, I think sometimes people misunderstand the role that Charlie played. But Charlie ultimately believed that we had to keep President Trump's winning coalition together as best we could. Maybe it was going to change. Maybe it was going to morph. But he took that responsibility personally. We still take that responsibility personally, which is why, you know, we're going to be constantly attacked for who we platform and who we're friends with and who we won't condemn. And, you know, that there is
I'm familiar
a point
with that
where,
dynamic.
Yes, Yeah, yeah, exactly. I know you are. And by the way, we'll be I'm sure stepping into it today as well when you look on X as the clip spread. But I mean, the point is, Charlie believed that the highest calling was to be a philosopher and a statesman. The lowest calling was to be a carnival barker and an entertainer. And so our job is not to entertain. Yeah, we want people to watch the shows. We want them to get educated. We want them to be engaged politically in their civic life, in their religious life. But ultimately, we have so much more in common than we have that separates us. We do, as Charlie said in that clip, have a true and real existential enemy, and it is the progressive left that want to destroy this country, throw our borders open, spend us into oblivion, and essentially ruin traditional America. They want to ruin the values that make America great and good and wonderful and prosperous. So we have a larger enemy. I guess family squabbles are going to happen, but I just genuinely hope and I pray that we can put our differences behind us, that this war will be quick and will be out sooner than later. Obviously, I'm pro getting the strategic objectives accomplished, but hopefully we can refocus our efforts on the true existential threat to this republic.
Amen. We have to debate it. I mean, the New York Times poll that just came out on support for the war shows overall 41% of the populace supports this war. 41. They compare that to other wars. When we went to World War II, it was 97% of the populace. Afghanistan, after 9/11, 92% of the populace supported it. Persian Gulf War, the first Gulf War, 82%. They go there. The Iraq War even had 76%. Korean War had 75%. And now you've got Iran down at 41%. It's low. So even if and that's all Republicans. Like every single one of those is a Republican, so even if you are a Republican supporting President Trump's behavior, you have to think long term about what's it going to do to us at the midterms. And in 28 is potentially in jeopardy if too many of those independents are really soured on this thing and upset, right? Like you got to think practically. And that's one of the reasons why, many Republicans, Josh Hawley was just saying publicly last night, let's wrap it up. Let's declare victory and say we did it. We did a lot of good. Let's not let this go on and on. Let's not let oil prices go back to $150. It was $120 a barrel earlier this week. Already gas prices are up, in some places over $1 a barrel. A gallon versus where they were. Now you've got the Iranians overnight messing with some ships in the Strait of Hormuz, which President Trump has threatened them not to do, but they're not listening. All these things will have repercussions at the pump, and once gas and oil prices go way up, so do all the other prices, right? So even if you think as you do, Andrew, that peace through strength requires a showing of strength, politically speaking, Blake, there have to be some practical concerns factored in.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that when we had students on, we asked them, we said, don't give us you don't need to give us a sort of breezy PR answer. We want to really know, how are people reacting to this, especially people who you think voted for Trump? And yeah, you're correct. The polls show there's overwhelming support among Republicans, but the president did not just get votes from Republicans in 2024. He got votes from independent leaners. He got votes from marginal people who don't follow politics that much. And I think that's where we see a bit of a divide, is that if you're from the president's hardcore base, the MAGA group, as it were, there's a lot of support for whatever the president's going to do. There's a lot of trust in what the president chooses to do. But there are a lot of people out there who were won over by the president in 24 for the first time. Maybe it was the first time they were old enough to vote. And that's where you're seeing the most skepticism. And that's where there's that risk that, yeah, maybe the rallies are as supportive as ever. Maybe the people on X are still really supportive. But those people who are less engaged with politics, who aren't following things day to day, those are the ones who are most inclined to drift away. And it's important that we be honest about that, because you can't win politically if you're not honest about what people are thinking, how they're reacting to things.
Mm-hmm. Well, unfortunately, the president took a hit after Minneapolis with those independents, and as annoying as they are, and I am one of them, I've been a registered independent for 20 years, as annoying as they are, you do need them to win elections. Unless you have an extremely enthusiastic Republican base, It's very hard to win without having the independents more on your side than they are on the other side. And right now, they're siding with Democrats over 72% on the Iran war. They're against it. And the Minneapolis thing, unfortunately, was so spun by the media as being evil and bad and terrible that the president lost a lot of support on his immigration policy and the deportation policy, which, by the way, was foreseeable. We all knew that once President Trump actually started to deport the illegals, the media would run with these sob stories trying to pull on people's heartstrings, like the one about the little boy in Minneapolis, to try to make them opposed to it. And sure enough, it worked. Here's Harry Enton, this is SOT 16, talking about Trump's net approval rating on immigration now versus not long ago.
Yeah, this idea that Donald Trump could somehow contain Kristi Noem to just, her own little part of the world, right, and it wouldn't affect him, that is political fantasy. Kristi Noem was hurting Donald Trump in office on one of his key top issues that got him elected president of the United States. I mean, just take a look at Trump's net approval rating on immigration. You go back a little bit over a year ago, he was on the plus side of the ledger. Look at that. 2 thumbs up, plus 7 points. But again, down he goes, in large part because Kristi Noem's efforts. Look at this, minus 17 points on the net approval rating on a key issue for Donald Trump, one that got him elected to a second term. And among independents, he went from plus three net approval on immigration all the way down to minus 30 points. I mean, my goodness gracious, on a key issue that independents had trusted Donald Trump on over Kamala Harris, and Kristi Noem's efforts simply crushed Donald Trump on such a key issue for him.
Was plus 3 with the Indies, now down to minus 30. One of the reasons why Kristi Noem's gone, why she was replaced by Tom Homan. I think you guys are where I am. I want them all gone. I want all the illegals out. And I don't really care about objections, but I do care about winning elections. And if we have to stick right now to the worst first, right? That's the Tom Homan plan, just the violent illegals out and focus on them in order to maintain the Senate and win 28, then I mean, I'm willing to live with that. I don't know. How do you guys see it?
I would think one possibility that I think we might really see is it might generally be a messaging thing. I think it might be that early on they went for this flex of, oh, we're doing mass deportations. That's what we're going to brag about on X. That's what we're going to make the slick videos about. And you can basically switch to, we're focused on the worst. We're getting all the worst criminals out, and still basically do the same policies. There's been reporting in the Washington Post, for instance, that you've had DHS sending letters to restaurants in the D.C. area pointing out all of your employees are not legal hires, and that's against the law. And so they've had to let a bunch of staff go. And if you're doing that all over the country, that's actually going to be encouraging a lot of the self-deportation work, that if they're finding it harder to get jobs in America.
God's ears. We hope that's true. I mean, the self-deportations would be a lot easier. We should somehow incentivize it more than we have. All right, I've got to end on this because there's no way we're ending today's show without getting to this. This hit X a short time before we came on the air. And, it's like, it's almost a joke that Bill Clinton would push Hillary Clinton into oncoming traffic. Like, we might joke about that he does it metaphorically, or he's doing it, in his head. He'd like to do that and hook up with one of those younger girls he constantly fantasizes about. But it literally just happened. So look at this video, which is circulating on X now. Hold on a second. It was posted by somebody who goes by Elder Ordonez 1. Watch. Walking. They're in the crosswalk. She's got her pantsuit on. They stop. Here, oncoming traffic's coming. He literally shoves her. Then he walks into her. She puts her hands up like, whoa. We got to see it again. Can we show? Got to start from the beginning. One more time. Stand by. Watch. They're walking, crossing, and she wants to turn. She's facing oncoming traffic. He shoves her. He walks right into her twice. To the point where she puts her hands up like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Now, you tell me, Andrew, whether there's something subliminal going on here.
I think that's the perfect visual embodiment of their entire relationship, their entire political career. And by the way, I would not, if, I don't know. I can't help myself seeing their interactions, feeling a bit sympathetic for Bill Clinton. Maybe it's just because I'm a guy, but I would not want to get on that woman's bad side. I would not want to get in the cab with that woman and have her look at me and tell me, what the hell were you doing, Bill? Don't you put your hands on me, Bill. So anyways, prayers up for President Clinton.
Well, that's the irony. That's the first time his hands have been on her in a good 50, 60 years. So, I mean, there's that. Maybe there was a tingly sensation there. Okay,
wow.
Sorry. We had
Maybe
to
it was
end
a
with
spark
laugh.
for something fresh.
There you go. See, I got you laughing. Great to see you guys, both of you, and I hope to see you very soon.
Thanks, Megyn. Good to be here.
Lots of love. Okay, wow. Such a funny clip. I couldn't get over it. Thanks to all of you for listening too, and we will be back tomorrow on day 4 from our remote location, continuing the show going despite the children's spring break. See you then.